Hey, what's up? You made me come today. I was actually tired. Today was the day I was actually like, you know, life. Life is interesting. Sometimes you just have days like that. So I've been sulking today, but still, I knew that there were a lot of things I needed to do, and did some tidying up, and I had to finish the script for this video because I had promised that 2025 we're not gonna dull. So real life. Sometimes you you go through these groggy moments and you're just tired. So today was one of those days. The mind is full, so I'm dealing. But thank you for making me come out today. I'm happy. Thank you for bringing me out. Because of you, we are here. So what are we doing today? You want to do content, but you're bogged down by all this politics happening in the industry. There's so much out there. We're in a technological age where AI and everything is just moving so fast. By the time you know what's going on, a new camera is out, another one is out. And even for phones, iPhone 17 is literally around the corner. Rumors and all that about how they're going to change the design is going to be one of the most major designs. So I get it. And that kind of breaks your heart because you might still have an iPhone 11 and or an iPhone X, and you want to make content, but then you just think it's not going to be good enough because we have all these fancy people showing their iPhone 16 Pro, you know. But don't worry, we're going to debunk that today. I want you to relax. There's a very powerful saying: the best camera is the one you have in your hand at the moment. So we're going to demonstrate that with my 4 phones. Don't worry, I'm not a Yahoo boy. I'll explain. So I have an iPhone 11, which I used to use in Lagos. And then when I came, I kind of had it as my side phone or when I needed to check stuff like my Nigerian banking or something. But it's kind of laying there. I don't really use that anymore. This one is a bit of a dark horse. It's the Sony Xperia Pro-I. I bought this one 2 years ago when I was in New York. There's a story behind it. I wanted to see if it can be a good replacement for my RX 100 Mark V, which was stolen from the office in Lagos before I traveled to Canada. Still burning about that one, but yeah. Anyway, that's a story for another day. But yeah, so I bought this one because it's got some tricks up its sleeve. It's a bit like, that family member that you have a love-hate relationship for, but once you get to understand them, you get to appreciate them more. That's what the Xperia Pro-I is. The Xperia Pro-I was released in 2021, so not the brand new latest and greatest. So yeah, so that's that one. And this is the Google Pixel 7a, and the idea was to have an Android phone for daily driving. I'd had a Pixel 4a before, years back. That was a good phone, but something weird happened to the network and I gave it away. So yeah, so this one, I kind of did it in anticipation that I might need a phone when I travel, and traveled I did. So this has been my daily driver for the past year. And I am going to be daily driving this guy, which I recently also got, and that's the iPhone 13 Pro Max that I recently got for the purpose of my business line. Having 2 phones, 2 data plans or data plans is not expedient. So I was like, you know what? Let me daily drive this one. So that is the story of me having 4 phones. It's not like I run 4 phones together, okay? Cool. So now that we have that out of the way, we want to see how these phones look if you want to do content with it. Are you going to feel like you're falling short by not having an iPhone 16 or a 17 or whatever phone that is out by the time you're watching this video from somewhere in the universe? So let's find out. First things first, you want to use your phone. You want to film with your phone. Again, today we're prioritizing video because, this content creation thing in terms of YouTube and all that, it's really primarily video. So what's the first thing you do? You open your camera app, you go into the video, and you press record, right? Wrong. Don't worry, it's not that deep. Now, you can do that. You can literally open the camera app, click record, and you should get a decent video. But it's good practice to go into the settings, because you might have settings that if you tweak them in terms of the resolution, like shooting in 4K, that might have not been set as default, or even some ways that phones create a compression to kind of just manage space. Because even in YouTube, they have the different compression rates or the different resolutions. So you can upload a 4K video, and if somebody has a screen that is not 4K, they will get the smaller capacity of it. But the good thing is, if your camera or your phone can shoot 4K, it's always good to shoot 4K. What phone should we take first? iPhone 11. To go into the settings for the iPhone 11, first thing you see is format. Leave it on most compatible. High efficiency, it's going to give you a more compressed file in a nutshell. Second line would be, oh, let me wear my glasses so I can see well. I know, sometimes it's a bit, oh, yes, now I see it. Second line, which is the record video. So if you click that, you're seeing a couple of resolutions, 720p. You don't want that. That's like really low quality. 1080. Again, 1080 is cool, but why stop at 1080 when there are other options? So you have 1080 30 frames per second. Now, social media generally does 30 frames per second. So the frames per second, again, I'm trying not to get technical here, but movies or film is actually still frames that are moving at a fast rate. If you see like somebody draws on a book, different pages. I saw it in one movie, but I'll look for a little cutaway for you. If you draw different things on a page, like you crouch and you jump, first page, you show a crouch, second page, half up, third page up, fourth page, that, and you do it like a step sequence. If you flip the pages at a certain frame rate per second, you would see a movement. So basically, videos are just still frames that have been synchronized together to create movement. So that's, 30 frames per second is kind of the way that motion works for like Instagram Reels and that kind of stuff. So if that's what you're shooting, yeah, keep your videos at 30 frames per second, and you can do vertical, of course, which is like portrait mode. I would say it's good practice to do 24 frames per second if your camera can do that, because 24 frames is basically mimicking how our eyes see the world. So for example, if I was to do that, there's a natural blur, my hand looks blurry, and that's how you see things in nature. So 24 frames per second is the closest thing to what you see in real life. Again, when you get into cameras, you also understand that you can make sure to get the motion blur cinematically. You need to make sure that your shutter speed is double your frame rate. So i.e., if you're shooting at 24 frames per second, you want to make sure that your shutter speed is at least 1/50th. Most times, like in Sony, it doesn't go 1/48, it's like 1/50th. So 1/50th is the closest to the double of 24. So you put it there. Anyway, that's for another video. Let's not worry about that. But I just want you to understand why you would choose 24 over 30. All right. So down we also have 1080 HD 60 frames per second. Has more frames per second, which means if you wanted to do something that has a slight slow motion, that's what you pick. That's like 2.5 times slow motion, but we're not doing slow motion, so you don't need that. Where we are now, which I initially picked, is 4K 24. That's great. There's also 4K 30, but we don't want that. There's also 4K 60 frames per second in a high efficiency mode, which would be a bit of a compressed video. We don't want that either. So what you want is 4K 24. All right, you go back out, record stereo sound. You can say yes. In general, I would subscribe that you use a external mic like what I have here, so that you get a more pristine audio. Not to say that iPhone audio is not good or mobile audios are not good. Phones have really come far now. The audio from phones are really good. But you're gonna find that in certain circumstances, when the phone is away from you, you're gonna want to have a lav mic, because the further you're away from the source or the microphone, which can be good if you're doing like a voice note, or you wanna record something like voiceovers, which I've done in the past, and it sounds really good for a phone, you're gonna need to have a mic close to you. But today we're not dealing with audio, we're gonna just focus on the video. And then in another video, a series of this picking up from here, I will show you some audio solutions for your mobile videography. Drop me a comment if that's something that you like to see. you know. To recap, you want your video resolution at the highest, in this case 4K. We're doing 24 frames per second because it's the most cinematic motion blur. We're not shooting slow motion, so that's not relevant right now. Keep your audio at stereo. It can be good scratch audio. And if you're in a place where you're trying to capture something in stereo, which life happens because you have 2 ears, except you have 3 and you're an alien. In general, you don't worry about that. When you're dealing with content anyway, you're gonna have to have a mic. Like I have one here and one here. The reason why I have 2 mics today is because I know I'm gonna be leaning forward and be out of the scope of this one. So I wanted to just make sure that when I do lean forward, I can cut to this one in post. So let's look at the settings of the Xperia Pro-I and see what that one has up its sleeve. A bit of a dark horse. This camera or this phone has 3 camera apps. It has the camera, regular camera app, it has the Cinema Pro, and it has the Video Pro. So the camera app is more photocentric. It's designed to just take like pictures. And then we have Cinema Pro, which I think is the daddy of everything. What this one is for really like shooting filmic things. Like it even has a Venice look. The Venice cameras is like their cinema line camera. Again, we have limitations in a sensor size, processing limitations. So it's not that it's going to be apples to apples comparison, but it's trying to mimic the flat profile of that. Here, the resolution is 4K. You can even shoot 2K if you want to go lower, but 4K is what you shoot. But this is unique to when you're shooting with these cameras. You can't flip the camera at all. You can't flip it around for you to do the selfie thing. It doesn't use the front-facing camera. It's kind of for the serious stuff when you want to rig it up and do something cinematic. But let's not digress too much. Remember, we're beginners. We have our phone. We want to be able to keep the friction as minimal as possible. So what we want is the Video Pro app. In fact, if you look at the logo, it's more like a camcorder. So it's not like a cinema rig camera like the Cinema Pro app. So that's where you want to go for what we want to do. Video format. Well, the video format also is locked to 1080, 1920. So that's like this caveat that happens with different brand phones, but it's fine. We're going to roll with it because you might have a phone that also shoots 1080. So let's see what the 1080 looks like in comparison to that. While this is not a phone comparison, we're still going to see if the 1080 is worth using, if having the front camera shoot 1080 is worth it or not. In settings, we're seeing that frame rates. Now you would find that sometimes you don't see exact 24, you see 23.98. I think in Premiere Pro, I don't know if they've changed that. Back in the day, you even see 23.976, but you can just round up the decimal points. It's 24, all right? So we keep it at the closest to 24. Stabilization, which can be turned on, but see what happens. When you put stabilization on, it gives you a crop. And we don't want that, considering we're using the front camera. And even though we're not vlogging physically this time, but with it on, we're already cropping in. We put it off, we get a bit more wide. So let's keep it wide because sometimes wider is better. White balance, it's on auto and it doesn't change. ISO, cannot change this setting when using the front camera. So I know it looks like a misnomer or is defeating the objective, right? Because the front camera of this particular phone is very limited, even more limited than the iPhone was. But let's not worry about it. Let's have it the way it is. And for the Pixel, same thing. We go into the camera app. Remember, we're focusing on the front-facing camera, so we're going to click the reverse, and that gives us our front-facing camera, which is this. The Pixel has 1x and it has 1.4, which is like a crop. We don't want the crop, so let's stay at 1. We want the ratchet. We want the ratchet. Video settings, selfie illumination, no. Now that seemingly does something great where it creates this extra exposure, but you don't want to be doing all these internal processes. It's better you color grade later when you are editing. Again, editing is a thing. There's so many apps now like CapCut. I use DaVinci Resolve and it's great, it's simple, but a lot of people get a bit intimidated. Don't be intimidated by it. You can try it because it's free too. The free version can give you everything you need, but CapCut seems to be one of the most famous ones. So hey, download CapCut for free and also start. I'm not a CapCut person. I've never really used CapCut. I'd seen it one time. I think I downloaded it on my phone, but I never really used it. So maybe one day we'll do a video where I am starting CapCut from fresh and we go through the uncomfortableness together. But I'm sure that we can get through and show you that it can be done. You just need to invest small time. Resolution. You see the Pixel gives you the option for full HD or for 4K. So let's keep it on 4K because that's the best resolution we need. Camera sound, camera scan, blah, 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 blah. Storage saver, optimize storage space. We'll change the settings. So again, these are things that create compression. I wouldn't use that. Just leave it to give you the best resolution it can. That's about it. We're shooting at the widest angle of the camera, which is 1. And again, we're gonna change it to landscape mode, which is what we want. So that's for the Pixel. There wasn't really much in there at all, but it's got the essential things that we need. And let's move on to the next one, which is the iPhone 13 Pro Max. All right. Cool. So again, very similar to the iPhone 11, not much changed. On the resolution, mine is already there, 4K 24, which is what you want. You go out, there's also slow-mo settings for when you want to do slow-mo. 1080 120 is good. Yeah, that's kind of the highest resolution. You also have the 1080 HD 240 frames per second. That's really slow. But it's high efficiency. That means it's being compressed. Most times it looks very mushy and is not even worth doing it. But if you really want to do something stylized, like a balloon bursting or you jumping in a pool, for social media stuff, yeah, it should be okay. Record sound, same thing, stereo is good for scratch audio if you're recording the ambience of a place. You want to hear that in stereo, because we hear in stereo. Formats, most compatible. Leave it at that because it'll give you the most compatible one. Now with the 13, there's some upgrades where you have video capture, Apple ProRes. Now Apple ProRes is a very heavy file. If you watch the footnote, it says that a minute of 10-bit HDR ProRes is approximately 1.7 gigabytes for 30 frames per second at 1080 and 6 gig for 30 frames per second at 4K. So Apple ProRes is for when you want to do something cinematic and you want to shoot something major, like maybe a motion picture movie or a music video, and you want to use your iPhone to do it. I wouldn't recommend it. As you can see, it's going to eat up your memory. The newer phones have USB Type-C. This one still has the Lightning. You know, that's one of the things that, you know, people, oh, it's got Type-C. So like the 16 and Pro and all that has the Type-C, so that's easy to connect hard drives to. But you can get the converter with this one, which is a Lightning to Type-C, and you have the Lexa mini hard drives, you know, which are new and very small, and that's like the new trend now for people who want to do cinematic stuff for a longer time. Then you can shoot in the Apple ProRes. But for this case, remember, no friction. We don't need to think about things you need to plug into your phone. We want to use the phone as it is, and in the regular mode, 4K 24 is all you need. Preserve settings, that's the same thing. If you want your camera, every time you open it, it's the same settings. Let's not worry about that. It's something you can play around with when you know what settings you want to keep. So for now, it's not that important. Composition, you have grid. Grid is basically giving you like splitting your screen in lines to help you know where to frame stuff. And I think we're set. Let's have a look at our footages now. The first one is the Pixel 7a. Now this is amazing. It's actually very impressive. Cameras have a very small sensor relative to even like a Micro Four Third. I have an APS-C camera, which is a lot bigger than a Micro Four Third and subsequently bigger than a phone. For where we are now, you can shoot 4K 24 frames per second, and it looks really good. Full screen, I can even see it closer. Yes, you're gonna have some artifacty small grains because phones are not the greatest at low light, even though they're doing a lot of computational photography or videography to clean some of that noise, which adds its artificial sharpening. This is actually good enough for you to start doing content. All right? The next one is the Xperia Pro-I. Now, off the bat, I can see that the Xperia Pro-I has a lower resolution because the caveat of this camera is all the power is at the rear-facing cameras, including a 1-inch sensor. And if you notice, all the features were kind of blocked, and the front camera is really not doing it justice. But again, this shows you, this is a 1080 footage. Yes, with my trained eye, I can see that it's a bit on a mush. Sony also is doing their colors that is more magenta shifty. This is something maybe in the software you can tweak a little bit, but again, for what it is, 1080p, it's actually not bad at all. And it's enough for you to be able to communicate what you want. And that's the principle of this video. And for the iPhone 11, pleasantly surprised about this one. I was expecting a night and day difference with the 13, but apparently not so much. Considering this phone came out in 2019, it's really doing well. And it's just a testament to show how far phones have come. With a little thought, some lighting, you should be able to shoot with anything you have. So next one, this is the iPhone 13, and to be honest, it looks really good. Let's let on-screen Anis explain some observations. I mean, I'm not seeing any difference. I know that it has a better resolution screen as I'm looking at it, but in general, I'm not seeing much of a difference with the other phones. Like, it's not even like a night and day difference. It is a couple of years older than the 11. But it looks cool. It looks nice. So one reason why the iPhone 13 might be a bit more exciting than the 11 and the other guys we just saw is because from 13 they did something special. They added like the whole bokeh thing, which is the cinematic blurriness. And this is cinematic mode. So if you notice now, there is some kind of bokeh in terms of blurriness around me, which is really cool. It's doing really well. Sometimes you find that it misses edges. So if I had like big hair and, you know, fluffy things, it might cut some of it off. But because I don't have any unnecessary frills or feathers, it's doing really well. And I think this is really cool. You know, I can actually see the box around me from the screen recording as well, to showing you that it's focusing using this AI thing. And to think this phone is a couple of years old, it was doing that. It's used computation to kind of blur the background to mimic what a wider aperture lens with a bigger sensor would do. And that's actually amazing. So is it a deal breaker if your phone doesn't do this? No. Does it look nice sometimes? Yes, it does. But is it an essential part of making content? Comment down below and let me know what you think. Conclusions. Don't sweat it. You know, I feel that it's expedient to start where you are and not get bogged down by what you can have. Now, this is 2025 and already iPhone 17 is in the works. So what does that say to you? You can't beat the tech and the speed at which things are going to come out. So if you were focusing on getting the newest thing, you're always gonna be distracted from honing your craft. There's nothing wrong with you buying an iPhone 16. If I really wanted a 16, I could have got it, but I just thought for what I'm doing in my use case scenario, look at all my phones. I don't require an iPhone 16 Plus. I'm not even like a full-time phone videographer or using that as my main platform, but it's actually nice to be able to use the phone you have to take pictures on the go when you're traveling and all that. And this proves that even your 11 can still do that adequately. Sometimes we are over-focused on how many megapixels that the phone has and all that. And for video, that actually doesn't matter. When you're doing photos, for example, if you're doing prints, you would need a camera with a big sensor and maybe higher megapixels. That's why people who do professional stuff for billboards most times would either have medium format or at least a full frame camera, because the bigger the sensor, the more megapixels for photo. But for video, you don't even need that. For video, your 12 megapixel is enough. In fact, there's actually, I read somewhere that there's less resolution in a 4K 30 frames per second video than in a 12 resolution picture. So what does that say? You don't need megapixels to get a good image. What you want to be concerned about really is your lens being a fast lens, i.e. a lower f number, and also the larger the sensor, the more photo sites, which are basically the little tiles that collect the light and process the light. Phones have a smaller sensor, which means they're capturing less light, but there's really admirable amounts of processing happening in phones to even create what you see. And yeah, that's why phones might have their look, which is that digital sharpness for what you're doing with your phone, i.e. the social media stuff. And again, when you want to do something for YouTube, at least you can shoot on a 1080. But the whole essence of this video today is to really show that you don't need much to do your content. iPhone 11 can do it for you. So don't feel you need a 15, 16, or 17, or 20 when that time comes, depending on where you watch this video. Embrace these moments when you don't have much, because it is in these moments you would build the resilience and skill to understand the technicalities to make you better. So that when you have a camera and you graduate and you get like a little point and shoot or mirrorless camera, you can only be a better creator for it. So that's my conclusions. On the next episode, we're going to look at how the rear cameras look. We'll take it out to a non-controlled environment, i.e. outside. Hopefully the weather is not snowy and too heavy. We'll work it out, don't worry. And I can also give you some solutions on how to just do better audio with your phone. You're ready. Go out there, take your phone, start shooting. Tip, don't get too carried away by looking at yourself. Once you know your framing is okay, switch your eyes onto the little tiny dot, which is the lens. That way it will be more engaging. Otherwise, it look like you're talking to somebody and you're disconnected from us at home. If you record something and you feel it's a bit, brother, and you can re-record it again. You don't have to be bound by it. And trust me, your greatest YouTubers do the same thing. Just do it. Just do it. And the more you do it, learn, make, repeat, the better you get. All right. Thank you for hanging with me. I appreciate your presence. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, click all, and share. We'll do it again soon. Love you. Peace.